Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to another segment of the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We've got another fantastic topic, discussion, guests, and another wonderful show for you today. I just want to wish everybody who is celebrating, I hate to say it, well, no, I don't hate to say it, I love to say it, that Halloween is my favorite holiday. What can I say? I hope everybody's having a great Halloween week out there. I went to a couple Halloween parties over the weekend and got to dress up and look all scary and freaky and scared people on Facebook and got called all kinds of names on Facebook. What else is new? But looking forward to this Thursday. Going to be doing a wonderful event at our local group here in Roanoke, Virginia. So if you are in Roanoke, check it out. Earth Spirit Meditations is going to be doing a wonderful event here locally. Let's go ahead and let's welcome our assistant producer, Reverend Trevor Knott, who is joining us live from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Hi, Trevor. How are you today?
Hello. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good. I have a beautiful day here. I'm very happy, and it's nice to be in the 60s again. We were down in the 20s there for a few days. It was a little premature as far as I'm concerned, but the weather has been quite strange, and as our guest who will be coming on in just a moment, weird is the new normal, so we might as well get used to that. I just want to let everybody know that as well, after this show, we're going to be doing our monthly Lightworker Lounge on the G.I.C.org. If you like meditation-type music, we will be broadcasting and streaming that live on the G.I.C.org shortly after this broadcast. It's a monthly show we do. Without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about our guests. Our guests, we have two coming on today. Over the years, author Pamela Meyer-Crissey found herself in several serious crisis predicaments, a possible sudden evacuation while living on the island of Cyprus and living within 40 miles of both the meltdown at 3 Mile Island and the eruption of Mount St. Helens. These incidents convinced her of the need to be ready for unexpected events. On the other hand, her co-author, Brian Christie, realized the long-term consequences that could occur from accidents involving nuclear energy or weapons, having worked as a staff member for the National Academy of Sciences Committee on Nuclear and Alternative Energy Systems. Together, their experiences led them to the broad perspective found in Common Sense in Uncommon Times, which explores long and short-term survival. So joining us live now is Brian and Pamela Christie. Hello. Welcome to the Just Bernard Show.
Hi, Bernard. Thank you for having us. We're glad to be here.
Oh,
it's a good day to be here.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And this is a fantastic topic, and I think this might be our first ever broadcast really focusing solely on it. I know our audience is very, very interested in what you are both going to be sharing with us today. So let me start off by what I spoke of before, that weird is the new normal. Why do you say that weird is the new normal?
Okay, this phrase came about as we were renovating the book from the first edition to the second edition, and every day we thought we would finish up redoing the book, and every day it would turn out that there was yet another weird thing going on, and every day there was another weird thing, and eventually this became quite clear that that is the new normal, that we have no expectation anymore, that we know what's going on. And I would suggest that your listeners just keep an eye open, start taking some notes on how often the weather people are wrong these days.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's happening in your area, but they'll come up and say, oh, well, today is going to be nice and bright and shiny and sunny, and it rains, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, no rain, then it rains. It's not supposed to rain, but it does. It doesn't supposed, you know, on and on. They're just wrong all the time. And I think what's going on there is that the climate is just destabilized on the planet, and things are not operating the way they used to. And so the weather people are using models that are based upon observations and trends that operated in the past, but are not operating anymore that way. And they are expecting things to operate in certain ways, and they're not. So basically, we're just getting to an area where we have less and less guidance as to what to expect. So the thing you can't expect is the unexpected, and that's why we have to prepare.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, it just goes and transcends beyond, you know, we're just mentioning weather. I mean, we just see it happening constantly, whether it be the economy or politics or, you know, anything like that. I mean, a great example, God, what was it recently, a couple of days ago, or about a week or so ago, the EBT cards went offline. People that were on food assistance weren't able to get food, and that was a big surprise to a lot of people and created a lot of chaos. I can't imagine if the whole system were to break down. And this is this is what the book is all about.
Right.
You just keep your eyes open. Once you start seeing that sort of thing, you'll see some fragility of the technological infrastructure that we have, with things breaking that you didn't really expect to break. And like the Obama healthcare
Oh yeah.
site, you know, it shouldn't be that difficult to set that up, but it all fell apart. You start looking around, anything that you're depending on. You go to a website that always worked well. I'm sorry, it's down today. You know, we got on Amazon the other day. Oh, I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties. On and on and on. It's everywhere. Everything is fragile. So don't depend upon all that stuff working for you.
Yeah,
we talked about people's food, not being able to get food stamps, and I think a lot of people, when they're not making a lot of money, think, well, how can I store food away? But, you know, at these buy one, get one free sales, that's a good time to just put the free ones away.
Oh.
Because you really never know.
That's a really good idea. You know, it's funny. I mean, I have a very limited food budget as well, and I just remember probably about maybe once a month I'll just stock up on canned goods. I'll try not to eat them, but I will check out the expiration dates. You know.
Right.
And just keep a full cupboard. You know, because that way, when you know, if anything were to happen, or you know, or if you just have a bad week and you can't buy groceries, at least you have your canned goods. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we've always been a proponent of.
And you can cycle through those cans too. Keep an eye on them, and use the older ones and take them out. Put the new ones in the front or in the back, or whatever, however you want to do it. But just use it as a place to circulate your food system.
Yeah.
And it'll take care of you.
And is there a method or let's say a plan of how to cycle the canned goods? Is that available in the book? Because I didn't get to read the whole. I just was told we had lost our connection to Studio A. Sorry about that.
Okay. Are we off the air?
I believe we're back. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I wasn't sure what had happened there, but we were just discussing the idea of alarmism and how we need to really stay grounded in these types of situations, especially during some type of crisis. For me, I mean, I come from South Florida. I grew up with hurricanes. I went back to Florida actually about 2 weeks after Andrew, and it was like a bomb had hit. I was there for Hurricane Wilma. We all suffered horrible loss there. And what I found was strange, and I don't know if this talks about the aftermath, and we're gonna keep jumping around a little bit about disasters and planning, But I can't help but think or feel that yes, both.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. At least with a hurricane, we have warning. We can see it coming, and we know that it's good to board up the windows and get out of town and not be so macho and sit around and say, I'm going to tough it out. I mean, that's not a good thing to do most of the time.
But you're right, it's the aftermath, and that's where a lot of the planning does come in, because we advise people, like you were selling, put all of your important papers on the thumb drive, or store them in plastic bags if you can't afford a thumb drive. But keep all of the information you may need. If your roof's blown off and all your papers are gone, make sure you have taken your most important papers, your most valuable things, like maybe favorite pictures you've had in what we call a stash, and you take it with you, and it just makes life a lot easier. Insurance papers, all of that things that you might need after a bad storm.
Right. Exactly. Now, let me ask you both: what motivated you to get involved in this type of work and getting involved and really getting this wonderful book together? Can you tell us a little bit about some of your background and why or what you learned in the past to be able to write such a very thorough book?
Thank you.
Well, I think you mentioned in the beginning of the show that our background, Brian was involved with nuclear power, which he can go into, but I had those 3 incidents, especially the one in Cyprus, really woke me up and made me realize that if somebody knocks on your door unexpectedly and says you have 20 minutes to leave and you may not come back, you sit there and think, what do I take? You really don't have time to think about it. Luckily, at that time, I didn't have, we were young and you don't have as much. But when you're older, or even, 30s, 40s, and you start acquiring things and you have a house and papers, insurance, and grandchildren or children, and you have things that you are more valuable to you, that woke me up. And then, again, luckily we weren't evacuated. And the same thing the next year, a few years after that, with 3 Mile Island, you realize we may have to leave our home and we may not come back.
Right.
Those 2 things really woke us up. And then the third one, Mount St. Helens, it did go off, and luckily the plume went to the east and we were southeast. But you would have been in blackness.
Yeah.
And do you have candles in the house? Do you have batteries in your flashlights? Do you have do you know which direction to go? That's why we talk about how the wind is blowing. Can you tell which way the wind is blowing in case there's a disaster near you, that you can go the opposite way? These things do happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what woke me up to move in this direction.
Right.
Solar and wind and tidal power and things of this order, that we cannot continually disrupt the earth, taking out oil and coal and creating issues with that. And the nuclear thing is so uncontrollable that it is definitely going to cause us trouble. We basically have to go to sustainable, safe energy systems at some point, and the sooner the better. And when I was working with the National Academy of Sciences, we had this objective to look at all the supply and demand and environmental impacts of all the different sources of energy from the point that we were at there, which was in the late 70s, out through the year 2010, and look at those alternatives and assess them and look at their relative prices and their consequences for the atmosphere and the soil and the water and the rest of that. And over a period of a couple of years or so, we put together a really comprehensive book that compiled a lot of these different options, and it was very clear from my point of view, working inside the system there, that there was, at that point, the really important thing for us to do, or to have done, which we didn't very much as a country, was to stop concentrating so much on supplying energy and concentrate more on using energy more efficiently, because we are the most wasteful country in the world in that respect. And you take the same amount of dollar investment and put it into energy efficiency, you have a much bigger impact than you do if you try to, say, make more coal plants or bigger nuclear plants or something like that. And we went through this whole process, put all this information together, and the thing that was really educational for me at the end of this process was when all of the money was running out and the staff was being reduced, and eventually the only people left on the staff were the ex-nuclear engineers, and their task was to write the summary of what the whole process was about. And when the paragraph or two finally made it to the front page of the New York Times, the conclusion was the National Academy of Sciences says it's all coal and nuclear from here on out. And that is not what the whole study was about. But, read the book, but nobody read the book. They read the summary, which was written by people that wanted to continue with the nuclear option. And it was very eye-opening. And I had to wonder, what am I doing? What am I doing here working on something like this where you put in good effort for a long time and then the system just twists it around to whatever endpoint it wants to take it to. And so that kind of opened my eyes. I left Washington, D.C. at that point, headed back toward my roots, had some years working with solar energy, making solar greenhouses and things like that. And at the time, when I went back there, the local power company was in the process of proposing to build a new nuclear power plant right down the street from us, and so I had to get involved with that. So it's a long history, but eventually it comes around to Fukushima and the radioactive Pacific Ocean, and here we are.
Yeah. And that is that's quite a mess right now, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. I don't know what your thoughts are on that particular predicament, because I believe they're about to start moving the fuel rods now, which could be quite dangerous, I would think. But you would know more than I do working with them. What's your observations of what's happening there presently?
I don't know about the fuel rods, other than that's a very dangerous thing. If they were exposed in the back of a truck and the truck went whizzing by you at 60 miles an hour, oh, by the way, you're dead. I mean, this is very intense radiation when you're dealing with the fuel rods. So I wish them the best in terms of doing something with them that will alleviate the situation. But it is just a very difficult thing. I personally think that whole nuclear option was some kind of technological apology for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Like, let's do something good with this. And so they were never able to actually give up on it, because then they kind of have to admit that the whole thing was a bad scene from the word go. So I don't know what they're doing over there, but what I do understand, looking at a number of different data sources about it, is that the radiation that continues to pour out of there on a daily basis is much more intense than people have been told. And it's like 300 tons of highly radioactive water every day that's pouring out of there. And it creates a big slug of radioactive water in the Pacific Ocean that then gets caught up in the Trans-Pacific currents. And its destination is, by the way, West Coast United States, everywhere from Alaska through California down to Mexico. That coastline is going to be irradiated. It won't be a long-term thing. It's nothing to be alarmist about in terms of here's the end of the world, but it's one of the worst things that we've done. There's a lot more radiation coming out of Fukushima than in any other radioactive disasters we've had, beside of atomic bombs. So one of the people I was reading that was talking about this said, a rather sad thing. He said, the days of eating Pacific fish are coming to an end.
Oh, yeah. I stopped doing that after the Fukushima accident 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. I mean, we're at the point now, I won't buy Gulf seafood, and I won't buy Pacific seafood. I only buy from the Northeast Atlantic. Anyway, we're going to be needing to take a short break in just a few seconds, but I just want to let everybody know that the name of the book is Common Sense in Uncommon Times. And Trevor has been posting the link to the website on our chat room. So if you're listening, please go ahead and check it out on the chat room. I don't know it by heart, but can you tell us again, Brian? Oh, wait. When we come back, we'll tell it again. Thank you.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are speaking with Brian and Pamela Crissey on their new book, Common Sense in Uncommon Times, Survival in a Changing World. And just before the break, I was going to ask Brian or Pamela to please share the website where people can get more information and where they can find the book.
The book is widely available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other bookstores. The website is commonsenseUncommonTimes.com, and you'll find there a lot of information and other links and helpful materials that are related to this. CommonsenseUncommonTimes.com? That's it.
Okay, great. They're asking me to ask you to speak up if you can.
Okay.
Let me ask you. Let's start digging in here and kind of share some of the information that's in the book. What are the four most common personal emergency situations that people find themselves in?
Yes, we decided after looking at a number of different disasters and things that people need to prepare for, that it was rather hopeless to prepare for forest fires and then prepare for earthquakes and then prepare for, the list goes on and on and on. But what you can do is stand back and say, well, if an emergency occurs, where am I and what do I have with me and how am I going to cope with it, regardless of what it is? And so we found that we could categorize one's situation when an emergency happens in four different ways. One question is, are you at home or not? And if you are at home, there are two situations there. One is that you are being forced to stay at home because maybe the air is poisonous outside or something. And the other is you're forced to leave home because there's a forest fire coming or who knows what. The other thing is that you may be away from home, and then the question becomes, are you with your vehicle or not? Because your vehicle, if you have one, is a very handy survival tool in many ways. So if you do not find yourself with your vehicle, then all you have is what you're carrying with you in your purse or on your person. And in that case, we suggest that you put a little bit of thought into what we call the personal kit, a pocket set, we call it. And it typically would revolve around your keys. And you might have a little multi-purpose tool attached to your keychain that might have a little blade on it, something that might come in very handy, maybe a little magnifying glass or light, a whistle. These kinds of things can be very easily put into something that holds your keys together. We call that the pocket set. We also suggest that you get into the habit of carrying a handkerchief or a bandana with you in the pocket or in your purse or whatever, because the easiest thing to do when there's smoke or dust or something in the air that's not good, you cover your mouth with it, and helps you breathe carefully and safely. Okay, can you hear me better if I speak up a little bit?
That's much better, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that was the idea about the pocket set. Think about what you should carry with you in the event that something unpredictable happens, and it's just you and what you've got in your pockets. Think about it a little bit and put a few things together that might make a big difference. The second thing is if you're away from home but you're in your vehicle, there are two things there that we recommend. One is amplify a little bit your vehicle kit, which is where you have your jack and the rest of that. Put a few things in there that would be handy to have in your vehicle, so you might be able to survive a little while in your car if that is all you have. The other general purpose thing we talk about is what we call a go pack. Some people call it a bug out bag. It's a backpack where you have selected some materials to include there. Some, for example, some dried food, some bottled water, a thermal blanket. There's an appendix in the book that lists all these kinds of things. And the idea is that you carry one of those in the trunk of your car if you have one, and if you are in your vehicle and you are stopped and the forest fire is coming and the road's blocked and you've got to get out and go, grab your go pack and go, and it'll be good for maybe a day or two.
And that go pack could also be used for people who don't even have a car. It's something they could put important things in, a few survival things, and they could grab it and go. It's not just for people, in their car, but we do carry it in our car.
Right. I don't own an automobile, and I have a bug-out bag in my closet.
Yeah.
See, you're so prepared.
I got a radio, I got a crank radio, flashlight, I got a tent in case I need to go out to the woods, I got the thermal blanket, I got the knife and the. And of course, and the other thing that people don't think about is the pets. I have the cat carrier in there just in case,
Yeah.
Right.
You're very prepared for that.
Well, thank you.
Very proud of you. A lot of people, I don't know about you, but we've talked about that, we carry this go pack in our car, but sometimes if we're off on a picnic or you're going on a hike, you can go into that go pack and use some things and then just replace them. Yes. Once again, it doesn't have to be prepared and leave it there and forget it. If you need something, you use it.
You're always looking for a bottle opener or something. And if you've followed our suggestions, you'll find what you need in there to fill that gap. And you approach it the same way you do with stored food, and that is that you get into it from time to time, take out the old things and use them before they're totally unusable and replace them with new things. And it also refreshes your memory as to what's in there. And when you do take things out, you try to make a little note to yourself to replace that at your earliest convenience. So it's just something that you keep with you. It's part of your peace of mind.
Absolutely.
And it's a good thing to do.
Now, let me ask you, you talk about creating 4 separate emergency packs for different situations. Right. What are they and why are they helpful?
Yeah, well, the one's the pocket set that we just talked about. The other one's the go pack. And then we have a stash that we talk about that is actually a portable stash. And there you would have some extra food, some extra clothing, your tent, sleeping bag, maybe a big plastic, one of those big plastic containers. And you have enough in there that you can grab it and go, especially like a situation like a forest fire when you don't have a lot of time, just like the experience I had. That's where you would put those copies of your important papers, or you would have your little electronic disk that you have all your important papers or your important pictures. So you don't have to worry, because a lot of times with a forest fire, you may have 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
We mentioned a story in the book where some people stayed in California. So in California, they stayed and grabbed things, and the neighbors took off immediately, and the people who stayed did not make it.
Yeah.
So it's not unrealistic.
The fourth one that we talk about here, in addition to the portable stash, is the longer-term food storage, etc., that remains in your house for the case where you are forced to stay in your house because it's dangerous to be out. It could be martial law, it could be poison gas, could be radiation, anything.
Or an ice storm.
Yeah, ice storm.
I was going to say, I went through that ice storm thing last year, and we were without power. We had we literally all had decided to stay inside and stay warm and eat out of a cold can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But if you had a little camp stove or something like that, or you had something you could take outside, a little charcoal burner, then you could have eaten warm food.
Yeah.
And there are packages of food that the MREs that they actually heat up. They're military. And then you can have warm food during that time. But ice storms are not uncommon in the Northeast or a lot of other parts of the country.
One thing you do notice is that with most of these kinds of emergencies, the society gets back on its feet fairly rapidly. And usually you're not out of your home and dislocated for more than a few days. But you do look at areas where Sandy tore up the area there. Those houses are gone. I mean, people are not coming home to those houses. And there's still a big area around Fukushima where nobody lives. Those people lost their houses. So there are times when you do have to leave and you can't come back. But most of the time, the kinds of things that may impact people are relatively short in duration. So we suggest that people prepare for short emergencies and then think about who they're going to coordinate with if it's a longer thing, where they're going to meet, and get together with people you can trust, because there's safety in numbers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of large numbers, you talk about also being aware while we're at public events, because, anything can happen anytime, anywhere. I am one of those people, if I'm in a large crowd or something like that, I want to know how I can get out of it quickly. I don't know if it's just that I'm claustrophobic. I just want to know I can leave when I want to leave. So I am one of those that will scan and look for exits. Even if I'm at an outdoor festival, it's like, okay, what's the quickest way to get out of here? So what are some of your suggestions for large events or just out in a public event?
I totally agree with you. I'm a little claustrophobic too, but I think that's just common sense again. It's common sense. That, especially after the Boston bombings, we realized that now we do have to pay attention if we're standing next to a trash can. We do have to pay attention if somebody's acting strange, and it's very good to advise the police or somebody if you see something strange, say something. This is a new world, unfortunately, and we can look at it and be fear-based, or we can look at it like I often like to when we're driving a car. I mean, we're driving lethal weapons down the road all the time, and we're constantly looking for ways that we would, unconsciously looking for ways that we would escape. Okay, I get out of this situation, I'm watching this, and really you just translate that kind of awareness into your everyday life when you're in a crowd, because it's a new world and it's weird. So I think, using common sense and awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make no assumptions.
Yes, and unfortunately in today's world, you don't know who to trust and who's acting weird,
Yeah. And so many times you hear these stories from Afghanistan and places like that where people intending harm to our soldiers dress up like our soldiers or dress up like our allies and then open fire on us. I mean, that's the kind of world that we live in. You just can't make assumptions. I mean, kids killing teachers.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Who's dangerous? I mean, almost anybody. But that doesn't mean we have to just go into abject terror. It just means we have to be alert and just watch.
And that means looking up from your iPhone every once in a while.
Yeah.
And that's a really big, a big stickler for me, because I mean we could be in a crowd and 90%, especially if you're looking at the under 30 crowd, everyone's just staring at their phone. They're not even looking around.
I know, it's amazing.
And they're busy on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the ones that aren't have earbuds in, and they're tuning into their music, and so they can't hear the things going on. And they walk in front of trucks and various things. So.
Oh yeah, I just had a woman walk right in front of me with earbuds today. I was at the grocery store carrying this big old heavy cart with cat food bags and stuff, and I couldn't slow down very quickly. And she's on her phone, just typing away, texting away, and she just walks directly into my path, and I had to swerve my cart, and didn't even notice me. We
really set ourselves up when we're that unaware. For people who are going to be pickpockets or something like that, you're oblivious. So how are you going to know anything's coming? It's a perfect victim. I don't know. I like when I walk down the street, I like to be just a little more aware.
Right.
And looking strong,
and it's not to say that, okay, if you're into your iPhone or you're into listening to your music, that's all fine and dandy, but at least, do a scan of the area you're in first, be aware of what's around you, then you can,
every once in a while, right?
Yeah, just kind of play around, see what's going on, get your face out of the phone or the iPad or whatever it is that you're on, and know your environment, and then you can get lost in it for a few minutes.
Right. Especially if you're in a big crowd, a public event or something. That's a time to really be aware.
We see all these laws being passed in various states about not texting while you're driving and so on. And those are, I think, solid laws that should be widespread. But you have to ask, isn't it also very dangerous to the individual to be walking through a city street full of traffic and being unaware, like texting and carrying on like that? Because you can walk in front of traffic. You can like you had happened to you there in the grocery store. You can walk into light poles, and then you can fall off the curb and break your
ankle. You can walk into a bank robbery and not even realize it. I mean,
that's right.
Not at all. Trevor, you were going to make a comment. What was it?
You say a lot of people need. Well, what I've literally done is because whenever I leave my house, I have my headphones on, plugged into my iPod. I've literally trained myself to be observant of my environment. Even when I'm walking down the street or on the bus, I'm always looking around and looking behind me. I know sometimes it makes me look paranoid, but even when I'm walking down the street, I'll look behind me to see if there's anyone there. I'm very observant of the traffic around me.
I think that's a very good idea, and I wish everybody would do that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good point, Trevor, because when you have your earbuds in, your hearing is not, you're not there. So you really do need to look around more. That's a really good point. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Well, now that we have covered being out in public and being more aware and learning to scan your environment, learning where the exits are, how to get out of the immediate environment during some type of crisis, what is the triangle of safety that you speak of?
Yes, what that is an observation that in collapsed buildings, whether it was an explosion or an earthquake or whatever, many times when survivors are found, they're found in a gap in the rubble. And the gaps are formed usually when the structural members of the building fall down, but they don't pancake and flatten everything underneath them, but rather they fall against something that is strong enough to hold it up. It might be a freezer, it might be a stone wall, it might be something. And what happens is these slabs of building material and beams and such will fall, and they'll brace themselves on something. And so you've got the vertical holding it up is the strong thing, whatever it is, brick wall or a freezer or something like that. And then you've got the floor as the other floor of the triangle, and then the long hypotenuse of the triangle, if you would, is the beam or the slab of building material that is fallen down. So if you're in a building that is beginning to collapse, or you can't make it out, it's an earthquake, and you don't have enough time to get out, or it's blocked or something, what we're recommending there is you look for anything that is strong enough to support a lot of weight and get on the floor right next to it, not under it, like, you don't get under a bed or something like that, but next to a bed or a piece of furniture or anything strong like that, because if and when things fall down, there's still likely to be a uncrushed area of the triangle of safety there between the strong thing and the slab and the floor. So many people survive that way, and there's some stories in the book about how that really helped people survive. This one gal had to find some way to cut her hair because her long hair had gotten caught in the rubble, and she couldn't get that out. She had to cut her hair off, but eventually she was able to get her hair out, and she was in that triangle of safety. She happened to have some water with her, and she was able to survive for quite a long period of time, and people were very surprised when the tractors came in and pulled her stuff off, and there she was.
Wow, you just made a really good point, and I hope I'm not coming off as being sarcastic, but I really mean this. Maybe I have very long hair as well, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm going to start wearing a ponytail during a storm or something, or put it in a bun. I never thought of that because I get my hair caught in a lot of things, in drawers and the oven when I'm leaning over closing the oven door. It's been caught. So I can imagine
Yeah.
during a hurricane or a snowstorm or an earthquake or something, that might be a good idea. Keep a hair scrunchie around and pull it.
We're not going to make any recommendations about hair length. I've had my hair long for long periods of time too. I do remember, if you're not familiar with the history of where that came from, why the Army has short hair. It goes all the way back to, I think, Alexander the Great, and they all had long hair, long beards and stuff. And what they found was that the enemy, whoever it was, would grab their beard or their hair and use that to yank their head back, and then they slice their necks.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It was a defensive move to prevent the enemy from getting a hold of you. That's where that short hair in the Army came from.
That makes a lot of sense, especially I guess after the Civil War is when we started buzzing our heads, right? Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we learn from our mistakes.
Sometimes.
Right. We've already got a few more seconds in this particular segment, and we're going to be coming back after this particular break. I just want to again remind everybody the title of the book is Common Sense in Uncommon Times. I know that we did have some tech difficulties, and the volume was a little low in some parts. So anything that you might have missed in today's broadcast, you can get the full info here in the book, Common Sense in Uncommon Times. And we are coming back with Brian and Pamela after this short commercial break here on the Just Bernard Show. So stick around, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Oh, yes, we will.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are here today speaking with Brian and Pamela Crissey on their new book, Common Sense in Uncommon Times. We're speaking about survival in a changing world, whether it be disasters or a hurricane or martial law or anything like that, something that we may not be expecting, and what we can do about it. And with that being said, one of the biggest problems I remember having after Hurricane Wilma, and it's funny how this works, my phone was working just fine shortly after the storm, and then, of course, the cell towers went down afterward because everyone started using them, and they got crazy. With that happening, a lot of the charge, I mean, we didn't have electric, so the charge was gone in a matter of time from trying over and over and over again, trying to use the phone. Is there any way, I've seen little tricks, but I'm wondering what you recommend that people can do to charge our phone if the power goes out?
Well, there's a variety of techniques that are available. One thing that people might want to observe is that there are typically places that have emergency power, and if you can find them, and sometimes there are banks and other public places, you can go there, and sometimes they will set up charging stations for people, and that is helpful. If you're out of the city and this has occurred, there are things that you can take with you in your portable stash. There is a variety of solar-charged devices that can charge a wide variety of electronic devices, and those are good while the sun shines. And if it's cold and dark and cloudy and that's not working so well, there's another one we talk about a little bit in the book, which actually runs off of a wood fire. And you get your fire going and crank that thing up, and here comes the power out of the USB port, and you're back up. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it's a neat little thing. I mean,
that's very cool.
To stay up, you do have to be aware that, as you know, in the situation that you had with Wilma, that if the cell phone towers are down or the power grid is down, your communication is going to be down. The cell phone towers typically have batteries that are charged as long as the power grid is up. But if the power grid goes down for more than a day or so, those batteries get drained, and when the cell phone towers die.
And then that's why you wouldn't be able to communicate hours after a storm, even if you could communicate during.
Right. And when they do come on, as you saw there with Wilma, they often get just totally overloaded, and you can't get in or out. One thing you can do sometimes is call somebody that's out of the area and have them call in turn back to somebody in the area. And sometimes by changing the route like that, you can actually get information through to or from some other person in the disaster area.
Well, that would make sense.
Or if you know someone who's a shortwave radio person.
We're working with a local self-reliance group here in our part of western North Carolina. And our current research task is to figure out how we are going to communicate with each other this side of smoke signals. If and when the power grid were to go down. I mean, it could be like an electromagnetic pulse, coronal mass ejection from the sun, something like that, that potentially fries all the electronics on the side of the Earth that's facing the sun at that moment. That could be any time, any day. If that sort of thing happens, it's going to be a long time before things get back to normal, if they ever do. And in those extended kinds of outages, the cell phone becomes increasingly less useful because it depends upon what just went out, and it's probably fried too. So that is gone, and so you pick up the telephone and maybe just a landline if anybody has one still, and that may be up when the power grid is down, but it is also electrical. And if it was a coronal mass ejection, solar flare sort of thing, the phone system's going to be fried too. So that kind of goes by the way. So our question was, how do we communicate with each other within the local area? And we've identified a number of people that are concerned about these kinds of issues and see that there's strength in numbers, and that in the event of major shutdown of systems that we depend upon, our strongest suit is each other. And let's find each other and let's coordinate, let's get together, let's find the areas where we can collect that are out of danger and where we can help each other. And we've been working with those kinds of issues. But communication is required. And so we are coming to the point where it's very clear that one way that we can communicate requires a little bit of preparation and training, but we have found that you can go onto the internet and before too long find about 6 handheld ham radios for about $200 as a set. You do have to get trained and pass a little test and get a license, but and it doesn't cost much, but it does require a little bit of understanding about how things work. But in the event that all the power grids go out, if you have your own solar or campfire-powered charging station, you can keep your ham radio up. And then the question is, well, how does that radio signal go out there and so on? In our area here, and I'm sure in a lot of areas, there are repeaters, which are towers that receive and rebroadcast ham radio signals. And the one in our area that's not too far from here is solar powered, and it's got solar backup batteries on it. So as long as it's been sunny, not too far distant past, that repeater is up, and that repeater is able to send signals throughout the county-wide area that we're doing this coordination in. So that is just beginning to come together now. We've not yet trained ourselves or got the radios, but that's what we're finding out is probably a good way to go that does work when other things do not.
It's funny you mentioned ham radio. I've been actually been very interested in buying a CB radio again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody remember those from the 70s, but I always felt, now that we're relying on digital and cell phone towers, it might not be a bad idea to keep a CB radio around.
That's right. We considered that, and it is cost effective and available. It requires no license and so on, but it is line of sight, and we live in the mountains here, and our line of sight is at most a half a mile, and it doesn't include any of our friends. So the CB radios are great for Indiana and Illinois and Kansas, but less so here in the Appalachian.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, I live over by the rail yards, and I figure all the trucks coming through, maybe I can get a trucker.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're kind of on a high plane almost.
Yeah. So with that being said, as far as communication is concerned and how to deal with what happens with our telephones, let's talk about looking for or being aware of the safety of the external world once something has happened. You had spoken a little bit about, Pamela, about checking the direction of the air if there was some kind of contamination, whether it be a volcano or a radiation leak. What are the signs that we're looking for dangerous air?
Well, the signs for dangerous air if there's some kind of chemical explosion. One of the biggest signs is if you see people falling down,
right.
Get out of the way.
Oh, that's nice.
It sounds awful, but you cannot help them. Once people are down, it's very quick. You can grab the people nearest you and get out of town. If you're farther back from that, you're not right in a situation like that. And like the train collision up in Canada recently, and there was a lot of dangerous air. Then you need to know which way your wind is blowing, and it goes back to the old little finger thing. You lift your finger and put it up to the air, and you can tell which way it's going, blowing. You can also tell by the direction the flags are blowing.
Yeah.
And a flag stands out at about 12 miles per hour. And Brian's got a beautiful little diagram in the book about how you can place yourself facing the disaster that just happened and determine the wind that's going and get out of the way. And that's how, so I was clear in Mount St. Helens, I was clear of the plume, but if you were, a very different situation, you would want to know which way the wind was blowing to see if it was going to come your way if you were east of the volcano, so you would get out of the way. Get your car out of the way so you wouldn't have had your paint job messed up, and but especially if it's chemical, that's when you really need to get out of the way quickly.
Yes, exactly.
Have anything to add to that?
Well, I'll just say, again, it's the same subject, isn't it? Be alert and think a little bit about what you do if you get engulfed in something like the people there in that little Canadian town did. In that case, it was a Saturday night, and it was just a sleepy little town, and most of the young people were at this nightclub, and they were just having a good old time. They were dancing, and the music was loud, and everybody was having a good time. And then this train, without anybody on board, without any brakes set, for some reason, just took off on its own and gained speed, came down into the town, hit a curve too fast, and those cars burst open, and that nasty stuff burst into flame and started heading towards town. People that were in town that weren't at the nightclub, they heard the crash and everything. They looked out the window, and here's this big burning plume of gas, and it was coming towards them. And so if that happens, the first thing you have to estimate is whether that is coming in your direction in such a way that you've got to get out of its way. So this is the primary thing that one has to do is to make that assessment. Is it coming your way? And basically, if you see where it is and you point your your hand at it, and there's more than a fist between between the wind direction and the source of the pollution, it's probably not going to get you. But if it is close enough that you can cover the direction of the wind and the source of the noxious gas with your fist, you've probably got to get out of the way. And there's directions in the book as to how best to go from that point.
And that's the other reason we suggested you carry a handkerchief around, because you can wet that and put it over your face immediately and protect yourself that way.
And if you don't have ready water, your human body makes water. And it may not sound very good, but it's better than dying.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you cover your face and off you go.
Yeah. I'm having a little giggle here because I remember we were during the Occupy movement. We were trying to give suggestions for people that were going how to protect themselves from the police pepper spray, and the wet handkerchief was one of them.
Yeah.
Think like an activist. Be active.
Yeah.
It's not pepper spray, though.
Well, that's tear gas and pepper spray. There's really not much you can do this side of goggles.
Yeah.
You just cover your eyes. You know, the bandanas and all that are nice, but you cover your eyes with those, and you're going to walk into a light pole or something. So the goggles are, the little swim goggles are inexpensive, and they're small, and they can fit into a go pack if that's something that you choose to include there.
Yeah, if you're around something, it's going to include pepper spray, potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a possibility with some of the protests these days.
Yes, absolutely, a very common one these days. And actually, that probably would be a great sub topic with surviving a protest.
Yeah, really, we didn't think about that, but you're right.
It's common these days to protest. So let me ask you now, I moved here to Roanoke, and the reason why I chose the neighborhood I'm in is I'm about a quarter of a mile from the Roanoke River. And that was one of the reasons that I liked this neighborhood. I was like, well, you know what? If S hits the fan, I can just grab water from the Roanoke River, and I can go off into the Appalachian Trail and find a couple mongooses to eat or whatever. But
unlikely mongooses.
Well, I don't know if we have them here. But we have deer. We have lots of deer, but I don't know if I could take one down. But I could grab it maybe. But the reality of it is that they say that the Roanoke River is filthy, because it's right next to the rail yard. We've got all the coal coming through, the runoff from the coal going into the river. Yeah. So I really would never really drink out of it, much less, I thought about swimming in it, but I won't do that either. What are some ways that people can filter water that might not be let's say not filthy, but that needs to be cleaned and drinkable? How do we make water like the dirty Roanoke River water drinkable?
Stop polluting it.
That's curing the cause.
Which is the long-term survival of a part of our book.
Yeah, that's the long-term. We definitely got to do that on all the rivers, and it's just unconscionable that we do.
But we will answer your question.
If the only water that you have is compromised in various ways, distilling is still the best thing, and what happens there is that you warm the water so that the water evaporates, and then there's some place where it can attach to something that's cooler, and it condenses back, and then you collect that condensate, and that's the clear distilled water, and it's free of everything. But there's quite a process, but you've got to, it's like the moonshiners, you've got to get the fire going and all that stuff. You got to have ways to do it. We have a few diagrams in the book of ways to do simple stills that can work. One of the simplest is that if you have a campfire, say, and you have any kind of a kitchen pot with a lid, typically you can put in that pot some of the water that you've collected, and in the center of the pot put a little collecting dish of some kind, and put it on the fire and put the lid on, but put the lid on upside down, so the boiling water condenses on the lid and it tends to move towards the center and drips off the handle in the middle into the little collecting dish that you got in the middle there. Very simple little still, easy to do. Everybody can find a pot with a cover somewhere. There's better ways to do it if you are, for example, going to be in your home and you have this issue, like somebody's been fracking in the area and disturbed the quality of your water, and you got to deal with it or whatever, and you want to do it on your own. There's a company called Berkey, B-E-R-K-E-Y, that has a line of gravity-fed filters that take out everything.
Do you have one of those, Bernard?
No, but I recognized the name from, back when I used to listen to Art Bell. That was one of their sponsors.
Yeah, and they're good. We know people, we don't have one. We have excellent water here, but we know people that do have Berkey filters, and they swear by them. They say it's absolutely excellent.
I don't know if it would clean up the Roanoke River, but it's supposed to take almost everything out.
That's what they claim. It takes out everything.
And the other thing you can do is, dig next to plants or low levels of ground level, and then just let the water seep up, and then purify that, which could be cleaner than a river. So anywhere you find green, anywhere you find low levels, that's where the water's going to collect.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. You just reminded me of I've been on I've taken a survival. Actually, it was for hiking, not for survival. But they always put in the what happens if scenario when you're hiking. One of the things I also saw was catching the morning dew in a garbage bag.
Exactly.
Where you just lay it out, you dig a hole, and you spread out the plastic and the dew, kind of like what you did with the pot, where you turn it upside down and put a hole in the middle of the garbage bag and let it drip toward the center and collect underneath it. I thought it's exactly the same with the pot. That's a great idea.
Very simple.
Right.
Very simple.
And that's good water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Unless they chem sprayed that day, but
yeah, right, right. And on the East Coast, with all the humidity we have, almost every morning there's a lot of dew around.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things I was wondering, I saw this show. I don't know if anyone's seen it. I can't remember it. I don't know if it's called The Hive or whatnot, but it was on Discovery, I believe, and it was a reality show where they put these people in a disaster scenario. I believe one of them was kind of like after a plague, and the other one was after I don't know. But anyway, one of the things that they did that I really liked the show because it really did teach me a lot as far as survival skills. One of the things that they did with water was after the fire burned out, they would collect a charcoal and they would get like a big vat and they would put sand and charcoal and let the water filter through the sand of the charcoal. And I was that's like my skin filter.
Yeah, that's in the book too. The problem with that is that what that's really good at is clarifying the water.
Right.
So it goes in muddy and it comes out clear. But if what you've got there is polytoluene or something in your water, that's going to go right through that filter. If it's radiation, it goes right through the filter. There's all kinds of germs, Giardia, all that goes right through that filter. But it does take the mud out and clarifies the water. So it's a good first step. But it's not a complete solution to the kinds of dangers that are out there in the water that you might encounter outside the confines of your house.
Have you seen this new item that's been out for about a year now called Life Straw? And it's like a straw you stick in the water and it's supposed to get all the germs. I don't know if it would get rid of
it. We've seen that, and we've looked into that. We haven't experimented with that. My impression is that I think it's an ultraviolet cleanser, and so it will be limited in a couple of ways. One is that it's battery powered and small,
right?
So it's not a major solution. But if you wanted to get a glass of water in a pinch, is concerned about the germs, that's one way that is likely to take the germs out of the question. But it doesn't seem to me that there would be any route by which it would be likely to remove chemical pollutants and mercury and things of that order that may be hazardous in that water. I think it is likely to kill the living organisms that are in the water.
Right, like E. coli or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's certainly a good thing to do. But again, it's a partial solution. And really the only complete solution is always is you go back and you distill the water.
So distilling would be the best process if we're in a bind. I mean, if we're in a whether it be a chemical situation or something.
Yeah.
Right. And it gets back, Bernard, to carrying water with you. The importance of carrying water, whether it's in your car or your go pack or whatever, so you're not in a panic to get water, and you can slow down and calm down and think about it and enlist your common sense to be able to find water.
And if you're going to go out in your vehicle or your bicycle or however you travel, it's recommended that you always, before you take off, check your water supply and go back and fill it up. I mean, it's like having your gas tank full of fuel.
Yeah.
Water is the fuel that the human body needs, more so than anything else. And don't run short of that. Carry what you can at all times. So it's probably the number one thing you can do. Because you're not going to starve to death for maybe a month or so, but you can die from dehydration in a very short period.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I will say that I'm looking out my window right now, and I see my neighbors have the rainwater collection barrels. I guess for long term that might not be a bad idea either.
Yeah.
Oh, right, we have some of those.
Yeah, it's a good way. But again, before you serve it up to your guests at a dinner table,
you got to filter.
You might want to run through the Berkey filter or something, because what happens more often than not is that it basically becomes kind of stagnant, and it gets kind of cruddy. It's fine for watering the garden and anticipating the arrival of droughts and things like that. It can stretch out the normal arrival of rain. And you also want to make sure that you got them covered with screening so that you don't just create a mosquito breeding area.
Yeah, that's one of the things I find that seems to be a situation is a lot of them turn into mosquito stop.
Yeah. So you've got to get them screened, and screening the top of the barrel is not enough, because these pesky little critters are smart enough to smell the water in the vertical drain pipe at the gutter at the roof level and fly down through the drain pipe and right into the barrel and lay their eggs there and breed and so on, and then fly back out. And you wonder why they're not screened off. Well, you don't have the inflow screened off, and it's a hard thing to do a lot of times, because if you screen it against mosquitoes, it's going to clog up with leaves and various junk coming off the roof and that sort of thing too. So it's tough. But one thing going in our favor with this is the mosquitoes generally like to have shallower water to breed in, because if you have like 2 or 3 feet of water in the barrel, that's a little intimidating for the mosquitoes, and they generally won't do well breeding in that. They like 1 to 2, 3 feet of water, something like that.
Well, that's good to know. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and we sometimes add just a little bit of water, oil to ours, and that helps keep the mosquitoes out as well.
Yeah, it just creates a film, and it cuts the...
okay, I see what you're doing. Yeah, that would make sense.
You got to keep it up, because it will overflow the next time it really rains, and then all the oil's gone. And
right. And now, we've only got about 3 more minutes in this segment, but let me ask you ever so quickly if you could share with us, and we're going to go more into herbs and plants and whatnot, and medicine and so forth after this particular break, because it's probably my favorite part of this book. I really love what you've done. But as for those who are looking through the book and kind of like myself, it's like, wow, look at all this great information. What makes this book different than a first aid from other first aid and survival manuals?
Yeah, it's not a first aid book at all, is it?
No, it's not.
No, if you want a first aid book, you go get a first aid book.
We figure that information is pretty widely available.
Yes, why repeat it? And it's not like survival manuals of other type, because they're looking more at fear-based. But yeah, ours, we wanted to make it practical, because we feel like we need to change the way we are living. And I think that was kind of behind our thinking when we did this book. And I don't know how much time we have, so I don't want to go on and on. But when we were writing this, this was our second edition, and when we were rewriting it, we thought we really need to change this because you can't look at short-term survival without looking to long-term survival.
Right.
And that brought in the whole medical situation and the GMOs and the BT toxins in our food, and that's why a lot of we have the natural plants in there and the natural medicines and building up our immune system because it's the most important thing we own. So, yeah, it's very different in that way that we're looking at long-term survival and quality of living in the short term while we're here. And all of this can be used in an emergency situation, but it can also be used every day.
I love it, and I love that. Like I said at the beginning of the program, I love your approach. It's not fear-based. I'm sitting here looking at. No offense to our dear friends in the chat, but I'm seeing fear porn being posted. Mass extinction event, plutonium, emergency in Argentina. They're having a discussion on asteroid Ison or comet Ison.
Yeah.
And you know what? Actually, this book will help. I mean, if you're into that, if you like fear porn, by all means, why not add this book to your collection? You're into fear porn and you love to get off on crazy fear stuff.
What it is.
Enjoy. I mean, but this book would be a very good addition to your collection as far as things that you might need to know after the end of the world.
That's true. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to be taking a break in about 10 seconds. I want to thank you guys. I'm enjoying our conversation.
Good. Yeah.
And when we come back, we're going to talk some more about getting stranded on the side of the road, storing food, and some homeopathic remedies. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are speaking with Brian and Pamela Crissey on survival techniques. The name of their book is Common Sense in Uncommon Times. The second edition is out now. And, of course, you can find it on Amazon and everywhere else that books like this and whatnot are available. Now, I have kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, but I am very interested in the answer. What about, let's say, 4 or 5 days we're without power, we're without gasoline or money or whatnot. What about people, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, and forgive me, I don't mean to sound silly, but I'm being very serious. I know that when I was living in South Florida, one of the things that we all stocked up on was cases of beer and cigarettes. And I know it's not the healthiest thing, but for those of us like myself who do enjoy beer and cigarettes, what would you recommend for drinkers and smokers? And I know it's not a healthy thing, but I think that people really do want to know the answer.
How can I not say stop smoking?
Okay, but let's say...
But I like beer, too, so I won't tell you not to store your beer. No, really, I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, it was, you need to stock whatever your family needs. And if cigarettes are what you need, then, put a case or whatever, carton, whatever it is you need in your stash for those times when you need it. And there are a lot of people who like to have some wine and beer in their stash, too, because you might need that even more when the lights go out.
Yeah.
About a week.
One topic where we discuss this in the book gets back to community and barter as a way of economic interchange between people in the event that the ATMs are down, money is meaningless, all those kinds of scenarios that are possibly out there. Barter is one of those things that does really serve a good purpose here.
Yes.
And the way it works is this, that you realize someday that you're really not going to get a 100% A++ on the evaluation of how you've prepared for the disaster that you find yourself in. You will have forgotten X, Y, and Z, whatever, or didn't even think about,
Yeah,
some of
that's
these
always
things.
the way.
So you may have, a ton of red beans in your basement and no water. I mean, you make these kinds of mistakes. So at some point you observe that there are other people. I mean, you're not the only person in this disaster, whatever it is. There are other people, and other people that you perhaps have talked with before, and other people that have stockpiled various things. Now, it could be that people that you know or who are close by you have stockpiled the very thing that you're short of, and vice versa, in which case it's a matter of finding who has what and exchanging some things. So it changes the question. The question is no longer what is the complete list of everything I have to do to make myself and my family safe forever. That's not the question. The question is what can I put together fairly quickly to take care of me and my family in a short period of time. Plus, and here's the key issue here, what else can I stockpile that is really valuable, barter-wise, with other people that are in the same situation, through which I can find what I need and they find what they need.
And beer may be one of those great barter tools.
I've got to tell you, after Hurricane Wilma, it was all about liquor, and it was like, first of all, it did create community. I will say that.
That's right.
You bring out the bottle of rum, and you bring out the case of beer, and the next thing you know, people are throwing steaks on the grill and sharing them with you.
That's
right. Exactly.
It's a real icebreaker.
Exactly. I think it's a wonderful thing to store. Really.
Somebody suggested to us recently, which I think is just a really good idea, even if you're not a drinker. And that is, they found, I think on the internet somewhere, where they could buy cases of these little airline liquor bottles. They're like an ounce or two, whatever it is. And even though they're not into vodka or whatever the thing is, it becomes a very valuable barter tool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's compact, more compact than beer.
Yeah.
You can keep a lot of barter in that form. The other thing that you might consider in the same vein is like Bic lighters. Because people are going to have wet matches and their lighters ran out of fuel and all that stuff. And here you've got a whole case of these Bic lighters, and say, well, I'll give you a Bic lighter, and you give me, some bread or whatever. I mean, it works. So think about bartering as you start putting the things together.
Right. And what would be valuable that you could trade? That's a very, very good point.
That's right.
I think I feel it's funny because a lot of people, when you're storing, again, coming from South Florida, it was beers, cigarettes, lighters, batteries, water, and tuna fish. For some reason up here that I've moved into Virginia, it's bread, milk, and water. Everyone's like, get
bread and milk.
Get the bread and milk. We got to get bread and milk. There's snowstorms coming. I'm like, no, we drink beer and cigarettes.
And tuna.
And tuna. But, and again, it's funny how even regionally there is a difference. So there is something to be said for that. There is something to be said for that. Yeah. Let's move on a little bit because we've only got 20 more minutes left. Let's talk about medical help for emergencies. Yes, of course, hopefully everyone is going to have some type of a first aid kit available. But let's say I thought I had a whole bottle of Motrin and I only have 3 pills left. What do we do then? Can you? And I know in the book you share a little bit about plants that grow around, and what we can use for making up for the what we don't have. But for me, I will say that I do. My concern is bleeding. My concern is pain. My concern is electrocution because that could easily happen during some type of a disaster. And my concern is dehydration. What can we do on a natural level? Let's say you live where we live in the mountains. What do we look for?
Well, one of the things we recommend, in addition to getting your own first aid kit and getting a first aid book, which are both valuable to have, and this book.
Yeah.
But to get, everybody really should have a local plant book because they vary. Right, you are all going to have dandelions and we're going to have plantains. Most places have that, and we put some of those plants in the book. And we recommend a lot of homeopathic products that you can get at health food stores because they're so tiny and they're very effective. They were developed in the 19th century, and it's based on substances that might cause an issue within your body. Minute doses of that very same substance will take away that issue. So there's many, many different varieties of these. Like if you have a nosebleed, there's some that can help that. There's witch hazel that you can have in your stash or your go pack that can stop nosebleeds. There's one called Carbo-Vegetabilis that is actually charcoal that can help with indigestion. There's an allium cepa that can help with allergies. So we have listed some of the main ones in the book, and they're like little vials, so you can hold them in the palm of your hand. So you could have maybe symptoms that might be like things you're concerned with, like you just said. You figure out what that is. You go to your health food store and you find the closest match to that. And you put it in your go pack, or you could store it in your home when you have it. Because maybe if there's a disaster of any kind, the hospitals are going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to go there for minor things, but you may not be able to get to a store. And again, if there is no disaster, you can use these things all the time. We don't recommend these over and above going to your doctor, but they're helpful in a crisis. They're helpful when you go camping or you're on a hike.
You mentioned issues about bleeding and pain. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, but I think plantain as a poultice controls bleeding. Is that true?
No, I do also think that yarrow controls bleeding.
Yarrow controls.
Yeah, yarrow controls bleeding.
Common.
And if you're concerned with pain, I mean, if you're not next to a willow tree that is that can help you with pain, you may not have one. I would suggest, we do suggest keeping some stock of painkillers and Tylenol or ibuprofen, that's an anti-inflammatory, in your stash, added to your first aid kit. And we have a list there of some things we recommend to add to your first aid kit. And then it should be personalized because they're different with different bodies.
Absolutely. And be careful. I want to share this story with everybody because I'm sitting here listening to you all talk about painkillers and bleeding. And this is the reason why I brought it up. During Hurricane Wilma, during the eye of the storm, my roommate and my landlord decided to chop down limbs of a tree, and I'm like, the eye is over, guys. It's coming back. And the minute they got down, one of the power lines came down and whipped and knocked out another one of the branches. And so safety is a part of this also. I think there needs to be common sense safety. Don't go out of the eye of a storm and start chopping down limbs.
Right.
But with that being said, I will say that I come from a Caribbean family. My last name is Alvarez, and my parents are from Cuba. And one of the things my mother taught me was sugar is very helpful with clotting blood. If you're having you have a big cut and you're bleeding profusely, you pile on some sugar, it will clot up that cut.
You're absolutely right. And honey will also help with that, too. So either one of those. We mentioned quite a few household products that you usually have in your home that you can use in health situations if you really need help, like you're in a hurricane and you're bleeding and you can't get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's, I think we have enough time for like two more topics. So let's talk about pets because I think that's very important. I think I mentioned a little bit at the beginning, I have my carriers ready just in case. I'll shove them both in one carrier. But the reality of it is that many times when we are planning on survival, we forget about the other family members, which are our pets. It will be dogs, cats, mice, snakes, or whatever it might be. If it's a loved one, it's a loved one, no matter the form. So what are some of the ways that we can better prepare for our pets? I noticed that after a disaster, people are always asking for pet food. I'm assuming that was one thing that we need to think about in preparation. Is there something we could add to our go bag?
Right, and with your co-pack, it's going to be a little harder. I take it you have very tiny animals if they're going in one carrier and you're going to carry them.
Some cats, I throw in one carrier, yeah.
Yeah. So, you have to do whatever you can do. You have to use common sense in your own situation, and if you're going to carry your pets off, and It doesn't take a whole lot to just carry a few bags with you of extra pet food. But it really does have to be a little planning ahead of what you're going to do with the pet, the particular pet that it is, their ability to survive on their own, the situation that's at hand, because we've seen many times recently if there's a fire, people could not take their pets.
Oh,
and luckily the story that we were seeing, the cats survived. Cats are pretty resourceful, dogs not as much so. So it's a decision that's very, very individual for each person and each situation. But yeah, we definitely recommend planning ahead, have the carrier ready, have some extra food in your stash, and not just if you have to evacuate, but if you the electric goes out, like after Wilma or during an ice storm, make sure you have extra food for your pets as well.
Yeah.
Stored away.
And I got to share with you the reason why I would buy tuna fish is that would also double as cat food if needed.
Right. Right.
Double.
Right. Exactly.
If you have a dog, buy another can of chipped beef.
Right. And if you have a big dog, just make sure you have a big amount of food.
Right. And is it fair to say, let's say we are preparing for an ice storm, let's say we're preparing for a hurricane, that we would treat our pets as another individual in the preparation? Maybe cut it down a little bit. We don't need a gallon of water for a dog, maybe a half a gallon of water, but we have to add that into our preparation list, water, food, and of course we want to keep them occupied. We want to give them toys, something
right.
to stay vibrant and aware. Catnip is great for cats, during a storm.
Right. Yeah, I think for most of us, our animals are part of the family. And when we were talking about this the other night, I was picturing us preparing a car and putting everything in there, and our dog would be in the back seat. So we better have all the things she needs, because she's not going to be standing there waiting as we drive off. So, yeah, it's definitely something to consider. And I don't know anybody who wouldn't be taking their animals with them if they possibly could.
I think we have to put common sense into the equation, too, because let's say you've got a couple of St. Bernards and you've decided to, you're leaving your house and all you got is your Go Pack. And inside that Go Pack is 10 pounds of St. Bernard food, and off you go. And your neighbor isn't doing that, and he or she takes off with a Go Pack that's specifically designed to keep her alive. A day goes by, and she's still alive and doing well, and you're starving because your dog ate up all your food. So you gotta decide, what your priorities are. If it comes down to risking your life, is that the decision you want to make?
Yeah, and that's a really good point Brian makes, because even if you have a car, you may be packing a large family in that car, and the St. Bernards don't fit. So it could be a serious decision.
I think it would be very fair to say be prepared, think ahead, and make the correct preparations that are helpful to both you and your animal if you have so chosen to take them.
Right. And they could survive very well. Not even in the house.
I know that if I had to leave my cats, they could eat the mice and the hedgehogs around the neighborhood if that
Right.
Exactly.
It is interesting in the news recently. I think it was in the flood area in Colorado. Another one of those weird is the new normal areas. The semi-arid Colorado.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they've got floods. Biblical floods. And the first responders have evolved their techniques, and what they're doing now, and part of getting people out of the way of the danger, is they also have vehicles intended to take the pets out, because they found that a lot of people would say, "Oh no, you take other people. I'm not going to leave my pets. If you can't take my pets, don't take me." And people were endangering themselves on behalf of the pets, and so the response was, "Okay. Let's spend a little bit more money here and have an extra pet vehicle, and we'll take the pets out, and then we'll get the people out." And so it is a real important thing to most people.
And we're seeing that more and more, I will say. You're seeing more and more pet-friendly shelters, more and more pet-friendly evacuations. So I think people are finally getting, I can go into a whole metaphysical conversation about how we're balancing the masculine and feminine, but the reality of it is that we are getting better with that. And we've only got about 5 more minutes left, and I think this is a very important topic that I'd like to ask you and perhaps have you expand upon, is the preparation with your household. How do we prepare our household? I am one of those people. I wouldn't drill them, but I would say, okay, if something happened, here's the go pack. Here's the food. This is what you eat. Don't eat the dried red beans. Eat the canned red beans. We want to save the dried red beans. So, how do we prepare our families or our household for these types of emergencies, whether it be being stuck at home or having to evacuate?
Sure. I think one thing that we might talk about just a little bit here is that one thing that is, I think Pam shares this with me, that is being lost or has been lost in our society is the process of sitting down to dinner with the family where you can talk about things.
Oh God, yeah.
Most of the time, everybody splits and they're in front of the TVs, and there's very little communication. But you do need opportunities from time to time to talk about things like this and just bring it up and talk about what would we do if we had to leave, and where is the emergency storage, and what if we had to stay in the house, what if we had to leave, what if we had to get out of town, where are we going to locate ourselves, how do we find ourselves. And in the back of the book, one thing that we have there is a little table you can fill out where when you get together with your loved ones, decide that if you have to leave town and it's safest to go west from here, where do we meet that's west of town?
Yes.
So, the OK Saloon or whatever. What about if we have to go north? Well, okay. You make these things, you write them down. People would have a copy of this book. You write it down in the back of the book. And in the event that you have to take off and go, that's where you coordinate. And it doesn't require any communication beyond that.
Yeah, and I think including the family, including children, like Bernard said, sitting down and not making a big deal. When you go to the grocery store and you get your free cans and you put them down in the storage room, and just explaining, well, this is in case, we ever have the electric go out for an extended period of time, and, this is the food we'll rely on. And then it just becomes an accepted thing, and then people don't go into a panic, especially children or older people.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. And it's funny because growing up, I guess because my...
Are you there?
I'm sorry, my mic was off. I guess that I was just going to say that for me and my family, we had a hidden closet, and we never went in that closet. We were told never go in that closet, and we never took anything out of the closet. But in that closet were the dry goods, were the canned goods, were the medical stuff, just in case. And it was just a normal part of it. And well, yeah, we did have dinner, but unfortunately not many people do that. But I think it is important that people realize that communication within the family, and it's not, again, it's not about fear-mongering. It's about, well, if there's a fire in the house, what if there's a fire in the house? This
Exactly.
is where you go. Where are we going to meet? If we're all out and we're having a party, where are we going to meet? Anyway, we're out of time. I wish we had more time. I'm so enjoying this conversation.
It's been wonderful.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian and Pamela. Common sense and uncommon time. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week here on the Just Bernard
Show. Thank you very much, Bernard.
Thank you, Bernard.